I've been a student of Tibetan Buddhism for 16 years now. There's some Tibetan Buddhist monks who have been my teachers, and they're closely connected with His Holiness's office. And when I had finished this book, and I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if His Holiness the Dalai Lama would write a foreword? And I asked my teacher, who then gave me the email address of someone in that office. And, I had drafted a letter. I described what the book was about. I even compiled an index of all the Buddhist teachings that are presented in case they wanted to just kind of look and see how was something presented in the story. And they did tell me that they would have to approve it, felt it was okay to have His Holiness write the foreword. So that's how it came to be. But I have to tell you, I still pinch myself over this.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about how to enjoy a more meaningful life. I'm delighted to welcome Janet Ettele. Janet is a Buddhist Dharma student, mindfulness coach, and author. You can reach Janet at her website, janetettele.com, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Janet. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. Great to meet you.
Thank you. And I love what I do because I get to meet such wonderful people. And I love to learn from what other people know. And I hope I get to continue to learn my whole life. But part of that learning process means I have to admit that there's a lot that I don't know. And that's part of what you're going to help fill in a little bit today, because part of your specialty is you've written this beautiful series of books, and you're on book number 4 right now. But the foreword of this book was actually written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So how did that come to be?
That was an amazing thing to receive. And it came about because I've been a student of Tibetan Buddhism for, I think like 16 years now. And where I study nearby where I live in Connecticut. There's some Tibetan Buddhist monks who have been my teachers. And they're closely connected with His Holiness's office. And when I had finished this book, there was some disruption in getting it out, and it became my project to take care of. And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if His Holiness the Dalai Lama would write a foreword? And I asked my teacher, who then gave me the email address of someone in that office. And I had drafted a letter. I described what the book was about. I sent the PDF of the book. I even comprised an index of all the Buddhist teachings that are presented in case they wanted to just kind of look and see how was something presented in the story. And they did tell me that they would have to approve it, which means that somebody read it and felt it was okay to have His Holiness write the foreword. So that's how it came to be. But I have to tell you, I still pinch myself over this.
It is so beautiful. And as I'm listening to your story, I'm hearing some elements that are so important. One is that you qualified yourself. You qualified yourself through your studies and also through your connections. And then an important aspect is you asked. You asked for it. And because you had already qualified yourself, when they read through, they said, yes, what you're saying is in harmony with something that His Holiness would be able to approve. And that's quite beautiful to get that seal of approval that you are on track, you are on the path. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today, because in your series of books, you're going through the 6 perfections of Buddhism. And but it's written in such a way that non-Buddhists can benefit from it. And before we get into the book, I would love to talk just a little bit about, in a broader spectrum, about Buddhism. Now, it's huge, and in some circles, most circles, it's considered a world religion. But there are some experts that say, actually, it's not a religion. Buddha is not God. He is an enlightened one. The purpose of Buddhism is to teach people the pathway to happiness, a pathway to end suffering.
Yeah.
And looking at it just from that general overarching view, I can see how this would be very attractive to people who are frustrated with religion, frustrated that they're not interested in that. Just teach me how to be a good person. I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. And I think this can kind of help fill that niche. And there are other people who are very interested in God and in very interested in worshiping, and it can also fill that niche as well. So it has kind of a broad appeal, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Would you agree?
I do agree. And I think that, first of all, it's really important to respect all the world religions. And even His Holiness has said he's not out to try to make people become Buddhists. He really emphasizes the importance, stay with your traditions. But if there's something in here that can, enhance your own spiritual path or enhance your happiness, whether you have some people have no religion whatsoever, no spiritual anything, but they, perhaps they just can observe in nature certain elements of nature that are at work all the time that aren't really separate from what we study in Buddhism. And that might sound a little strange, so I'll say things like understanding impermanence, that everything is always changing, and that we can observe readily in our lives, right? This helps us to, as we really think about it, to sort of soften our attachment to things being needing to be fixed in a certain way, because we understand that's an unrealistic expectation, right? To expect things to not change. Another thing we can observe in nature is the interdependence. It's always at work in life, right? In nature, we can plant a seed, but we need the right quality soil, the right amount of sunlight, right temperature, right amount of water. So there's that interdependence for things to grow. So I'm kind of going off on that a little bit because I feel that, as you said, it's more than a religion. It can be a philosophical view that can really help you shed light on the things that we encounter day to day and have another way of responding to the way life is based on sort of having a more realistic kind of expectation. Um, but so for me, I was raised Christian, and I still have tremendous respect for Jesus's teachings, and I don't see there's some areas where there are differences, obviously, but the basic message is the same. And in fact, I think for most of the world religions of compassion, some sort of set of ethical guidelines, how we treat one another. Um, I mean, kindness, the ethics and the kindness and compassion, I think are sort of universal in these different teachings.
I love that. And isn't it wonderful that we can have commonality and that we're able to have maybe even different opinions, but be able to respect each other's opinions? And I think that that matters a lot. And I love when you're able to find the common ground and say, wow, even though we may have some differences, look at all these things that we have in common. And let's build on that and let's be able to have unity through that. So I love it. There are a few things that you brought up that I really enjoyed. One of them was that you talked about softening attachments, not eliminating attachments, but softening and recognizing that things change. And that expectation that we have that things don't change
Mm-hmm.
leads to sadness and leads to suffering. And I love that you talked about our expectations because I think that a lot of anger, frustration, disappointment comes from unmet expectations. But sometimes our expectations aren't reasonable. And when we have unreasonable, unrealistic expectations, we set ourselves up for additional unnecessary suffering. Whereas if our expectations are in line with reality, then we can be happy.
True. And also, I'm curious what you think of this is that sometimes we're so wrapped up in our own lives, like it's all about me, and someone offended me, or someone didn't think of me, or someone, whether it was intentional or not, they feel dissed or something. That it's more about it's when we get wrapped up in our own self as being so incredibly important that we lose sight of the fact that we're just one of 7 billion people on this planet, and everybody basically wants happiness. We all have the same needs, we all have the same wishes, and we can, again, maybe I'll use the word softening again, softening our grasp on even ourselves as being so bottom line important.
And one of the things that you wanted to emphasize, I believe, in this conversation is making that transition from self-focus to serving others. Is that correct? Is that where you'd like to go?
Well, yeah, I mean, in part, it's one of the places we could go. I think that it's not to like deny your own needs or not take care of yourself. That's not the implication. The one is to just to recognize the other person's suffering too. Somebody's having a bad day and they say something that is off-putting. You might be able to kind of get out of your own feeling of feeling offended and be able to look at that other person's being in a difficult place, and perhaps what they said or did is something you can actually not get so angry about and worked up about. You can have a little compassion for their suffering as well.
Okay. So as I'm trying to understand the message, isn't it crazy? We use words, but sometimes words aren't quite enough to get the message that you intend into my head. So I'm going to just rephrase just a little bit. What I'm hearing is that if I become a little bit more aware of the people around me, then their actions um, might not affect me or hurt me as deeply because I am able to choose my response, which is inside of me, based on being able to have some compassion and being able to recognize that they have their own set of needs and wants and their history and their background, the same that I do, and that what they say might not or do might not mean what my knee jerk reaction might be. Like if I'm not in a good place and Janet says something to me and my instant thought is, oh, she's so mean and she hates me and she thinks that she's better than me or whatever line that goes down versus me just saying, I'm in a good place today. And when Janet said something and I didn't understand it, I can pause and ask for clarification. Or I can just brush it off and go on my merry way. Is that
It's a,
close?
it's a choice, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, have a choice in how you respond always, and what bottom line brings the less suffering. And yes, I do think you summed that up nicely, very nicely. But I think that that's something we can always recognize too, is we have a choice in how we're going to respond, and it's something we can check in with. And again, I'm not saying people should be doormats. That's not what I'm trying to suggest. Just saying that we can
Good. And let's
offer some grace to people around us and have some space for some forgiveness too.
I love that. And I appreciate that you brought that up specifically because sometimes when I have conversations with guests, we're talking specifically about our self-worth, our,
Mhm.
our self-awareness, our self-love, our self-care. We're using that word. And I don't find any uh, conflict between that concept and what we're talking about here with helping and becoming aware of other people and loving and expanding that compassion and that awareness to other people. I feel like the thing that is brings me peace and that brings me fulfillment includes my interactions with other people and my responses to their uh, their words, their actions, their whatever it may be, and my connections and my feelings with them. I feel like when we do it right, it's a win-win. I
Mhm.
think selfishness is one way to try to take care of me, and it
Mhm.
can kind of sort of work, but it doesn't bring peace. It doesn't bring fulfillment. It doesn't bring any of those things. I think that awareness and self-compassion harmonizes beautifully with compassion and awareness of other people. Don't you think?
I do. I think so. I think you said that very beautifully. And just there's something that's presented in the teachings I've heard. It's called wrathful compassion, where there are times when, some very firm, um, for instance, the simplest metaphor would be, analogy would be for a parent with a child. They misbehave, they could have hurt themselves. The parent might give them, scolding or something to, as some sort of consequence, not because they're angry and hate the child, but because they love the child. It's out of compassion that they are using some kind of forceful method to to keep the child from harming themselves or harming somebody else. And I think we can translate that to even in adults. It's what's in your heart. If you can find that compassion for that other person, that's why I'm saying we don't have to be a doormat, but there's a way to be strong and compassionate at the same time.
Thank heavens, because who wants to be a doormat? No, thank you.
That's
Um,
helpful.
the concept that you're describing, another term that I've heard that means something similar would be like tough love. And I'm also thinking of boundaries as you talk about this, that it is absolutely okay for me to have a boundary and say, wow, your behavior is not working for me. And I am going to tell you straight up, that's not okay. I'm
Mhm.
and be able to stand up for myself. And that doesn't mean that I don't have compassion for another person. My compassion does not require that I be less than or be manipulated or be walked on or be damaged. It doesn't mean that I need to allow someone to abuse me in any way, shape, or form. But what it can mean is, wow, your behavior was hurtful. I am going to put myself in a situation so that I don't experience that again. But I don't have to hate you for it.
Yeah.
I can have compassion, but I still am not going to set myself up to have that interaction again.
Yeah, and sometimes these things don't even need to be spoken. They can be, they don't have to be. It's just through your actions. But I think that we're at peace when we're not harboring anger and hatred, right? If you feel hurt and then your knee-jerk reaction, as you said, is anger,
Right.
we're not happy either. So I think it's important for us to also understand our capacity. There are some people or some situations that may not be, that we might not have the skill to help that person. And we might have to, as you say, have those boundaries where we just sort of remove ourselves from a situation because the help they need isn't something that we have that capacity to deliver.
Oh, I love that. So recognizing our limitations and being able to step away. And we don't have to own someone else's problem either. We're all on our own journey. My compassion and my support doesn't mean that I own someone else's problem.
Right.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I would love if it's okay to go back to so you can help clarify for me because I am not a Buddhist. I am a Christian and that is my background. So this is an opportunity for me to learn and I am grateful. So the six perfections, and another word is paramitas. Is that how it's pronounced? Or
Yeah.
okay. And I watched a couple different videos on it, and they worded things different and explained things different. And some said six, and some said eight, and some said four. I was a little confused. So
Oh,
here's what I got for the six: is generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, meditation, and wisdom. Do those terms match up with what you're teaching?
Well, that my books are about based on, yes, because you've got to understand these teachings came from an 8th century Buddhist monk and scholar, Shantideva, and so their original language is Sanskrit. So they've been translated into different ways. So generosity is the one that I'm also familiar with. What did you say the second one was?
Discipline,
Okay, so that's often thought of as ethical discipline, morality, um,
morality. Okay.
but also just sort of a vigilance. We talk a lot about mind training in Buddhism, of just vigilance of what is the mind's activity, so that you keep your mind in a place where you're not coming from a place of anger, you're not coming from hatred, because those things will inspire negative actions that will cause harm,
Okay.
right? So they talk about something called the three poisons of ignorance, hatred, and desire or attachment. So those things are at their root cause will create situations where we are likely to do things that could bring harm to ourselves or to others. Okay, so that's the moral and ethical discipline, or discipline, as you say. Patience is also often translated as forbearance, which to me is that grace we talked about, where you can recognize somebody else's suffering and therefore not perhaps feel so reactive in your own self toward some of their behaviors. You have a little bit of compassion for, like Jesus said, forgive them, they know not what they do.
Excellent.
Because
And
they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't understand the scope. They knew what they were doing, but they didn't know what they were doing. Does
isn't
that?
that funny? What an oxymoron. I mean, when we're doing something, we know what we're doing, but we don't really understand the depth of the pain and the suffering that we're causing. We don't understand how much it hurts another person. So you're right. There's, even if we know what we're doing, there's still a whole lot that we don't understand.
So that's where wisdom comes in. And then the what was the
So
fourth you said?
diligence,
Diligence. Okay, that okay is another word for joyful effort, or joyous effort, which is what my fourth
that's
book
what this
is.
book is.
Yes.
Okay. Joyful effort. All right. Will you talk a little bit about what is joyful effort?
Well, I think we've all experienced that when with if there was something that you were really excited to do, something you felt would have some really good value, perhaps like you launching this podcast. I don't know how many years you've been doing it, but I'm sure you had a vision for something, that you had a feeling that this was going to deliver some really good help and support to a broader audience, when you set out to do this. I'm assuming.
So is it the intuition of wanting to do something, or is it the effort of putting it into practice?
Because you understand the value of it, then the effort, the work you have to put into it is joyful. Even though it can be hard work, you understand the value of what it will deliver. So you're,
Oh, okay. So like the kind of work that's going to bring me fulfillment, because I'm not just working, I'm not just a slave, it's not just work. It's work that I enjoy because it has value and it has meaning to me, and that brings me that joy, that joyful effort. Huh, that's
and in,
diligence.
and in your
Would not
case,
have translated it that way.
it brings benefit to others too, to the people that listen to your podcast.
I love that. I am all for a win-win.
And
Okay,
helps make your effort more joyful. And it's diligence too, because it requires a lot of diligence to do what you've done.
it does. Okay, how about meditation? Is there another way that you look at that one?
Um, I think that's the last two, meditation and concentration, or is it wisdom? Concentration I've got them as concentration and wisdom as the last two,
Okay.
but meditation and concentration sort of go neck and neck. It is when we they're called the three stages of learning, three stages of wisdom, rather, and it begins by listening to teachings or reading teachings. Then we have to really reflect on them and evaluate, does this make sense? In Buddhism, they say don't just accept something out of blind faith. listen to it. Does it make sense? Test it out a little bit. Does it hold up? So that's the second stage of reflection and contemplation. And then meditation is where you really focus on whatever the thing is that you're learning about. And you spend some time in meditation, again, reflecting in a more focused way on that particular thing. Um, and requires a lot of concentration, right? Concentration and focus to hold your attention on whatever this object is.
I love that. So I'm imagining kind of a funnel in my brain that my first step is I'm going to hear something or I'm going to read it. I'm going to be introduced to it for the first time. But I'm not just going to accept it because you said so or whatever my book said so. I'm going to take the effort to ponder it myself and I'm going to think about it. I'm going to chew on it a little bit. Does this make sense? Does this feel right to me? Do I believe this? Is this something that's good and true and that's going to make me a better person? And then once I get to that point and I say, yes, actually it is. So now then that third step would be that meditation, that focus of, wow, I don't just want to hear this and I don't want to go through it. I want it to go through me. And I
Mhm.
want to become whatever this truth is that I'm grasping. Is that kind of where we're going?
Yeah, I think you do a really good job of this, of summarizing what's been said. You're doing that beautifully. And, the meditation is also a method of familiarizing our minds to something. Okay, so in that meditation, it's sort of like a, an extended rehearsal of something. So that, let's say you're meditating on compassion. Let's say that's what you're, and understanding that everyone, is someone who really, whether you know them or not, whether you think they're good people or not, are people who need compassion. The more you start to meditate on that sort of idea, and they're more, I'm really giving you the tip of the iceberg on this, so it sounds like I'm glazing over what could go into a much, much deeper conversation.
Absolutely.
But by the fact of practicing this in meditation, it becomes more, I think you sort of suggested, is more a part of you. So that when you are in your daily life, you don't leave this on the cushion, as they say. You take this with you into your daily life, and something comes up, and because you've familiarized yourself to this, your knee-jerk reaction will become over time more toward compassion.
Oh, isn't that interesting? This is such a deeper level of the understanding of the word meditation, because usually when I hear that word, I think of holding still for a period of time and being in silence or trying to not have thoughts run through my mind. But this feels different. Rather than not having thoughts in my mind, it feels like I am present, but I am allowing myself to become something else. I'm gonna have to chew on that one. See, I'm on
Yeah,
stage two of that learning thing. So I'm
yes, yes,
hearing
yes.
something. Now I gotta chew on it. We'll get back to that one. Then the
But
last one, the word was wisdom, and I think we used the same word on that one. Was that okay?
yeah, we did. But I want to just say that there are different types of meditation. There's calm abiding, which is just sort of following your breath and trying to just sort of be focused just on your breath.
Okay.
And and then there's analytical meditation, where you take something like impermanence or interdependence or compassion or any of these things, and you focus more on that in a more analytical way. And then once you've done that, then you sit in that more calm, abiding kind of meditation where you're just sort of letting it seep in.
Thank you for sharing this beautiful path to happiness and to relieve suffering. And I appreciate you joining with me today and having this conversation. Is there anything that you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
I think this was a great idea, and I think, as you understand, that it's so much more vast than this conversation can contain. Which is why in the books that I've written, each one is dedicated to one of those perfections, but in a story. so that it's contemporary Western characters, you know, in a world that we live in now, encountering the sorts of things we encounter, hearing the teachings, questioning them, thinking about them, learning how to put them into action, and sort of seeing the results of those actions in story form. And that's what I've done in all four of the books, but my most recent one being How Joyous Effort Works. And I hope that if anyone has gotten any interest or curiosity, you know, this is really such a tip of the iceberg, what our conversation has been.
I love that. What a beautiful approach. So, we talked about some similarities, how Jesus used parables, how sometimes within a story, it's so much easier to grasp a concept than it is just when we try to explain it with words. So, that's fabulous. Well done.
Thank you. I think stories kind of reach our heart. You know, just listening to an academic conversation is more cerebral, which has its place. But for me, I really need that sort of let me bring this into my heart.
And I love that. As we talked about, you explained kind of that learning. And in my mind, I made kind of a funnel. It has to work to my head, but in order to change me, I need to get it to my heart. That funnel has to go all the way down so
Yeah.
that I can feel it and see it and understand it at a deeper level than just with my mind. Janet, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for all of the beautiful work you do. And it was lovely to meet you.
Thank you. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He said, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion." Today, I invite our listeners to enjoy the happiness and fulfillment that comes from compassion and serving others. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.